Alright friends, welcome back again to another episode of Tactical Enlightenment. This YouTube channel is dedicated to all things Bannerlord related, but especially battlefield tactics. And a comment by a subscriber recently made me wonder about something, and so I decided to create this episode. We are going to try a couple of different battles here, and they're going to be infantry battles. You can see here we've selected all the Sturgian Tier 4 and Tier 5 infantry. We're doing that so that both sides theoretically has the same quality of infantry. And then we've also selected both sides, archers and cav. That's also tier 5 and tier 4. Now, none of the tier 6 units for both sides. You can see we've omitted here the Battanian Fiend Champ. We don't want them playing a role in this. And I do have archers in this battle because I want it to represent somewhat of a realistic battle, right? Not just infantry on infantry, which basically never happens. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because their comment was something to the effect of, thanks for giving the Battanian infantry some love. You know, so many people seem to bash them. Now notice the Sturgians here outnumber us by almost 50 troops, right? So they're outnumbering us by at least 10% of troops. And again, with equal quality troops, in theory, if you ran, an auto resolve, you would lose this every time. I think if you also turned it over to the sergeants, you would lose this every time. Now what we're going to effectively do here is use our infantry dynamically. Right, you can use your infantry in a bunch of different ways in Bannerlord. A lot of people put them in a nice big tranche, and you would probably lose this battle if you fight like that. Now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to use strategy, we're going to use tactics here, but more importantly, we're going to separate the infantry. Right, I'm separating my divisions here. The cav is going to be the second division, just a full division of cav. The third is going to be shock troops, and you guys may have seen me do this before. But these guys, I want these guys to all be two-handed mofos. Now, the first infantry division is going to be shield and spear guys. Right, Battania has the true three types of infantry in my mind: the shield and spear. They also have a sword, but they're primarily shield, spear. They have shock troops. Right, when we zoom in on these guys here, you see none of these guys have shields. These guys are highly vulnerable, but they have nasty two-handed weapons. And then Battania also has the best skirmisher in the game in the Battanian wildling. Now, my style of gameplay tends to focus on ranged units, particularly skirmishers. And this is part of the reason when I saw that comment from the subscriber, I was sort of perplexed. I was like, what do you mean they don't have good infantry? I think people are using Battania wrong. That's as simply as I can put it. Now, not everybody, of course. Some people have probably discovered this beautiful, powerful, unit, the wildling. But apparently these units are sort of bashed out there, and people pan them and troll them and say they're garbage infantry. And of course, if you do legionnaire against wildlings in just a straight up battle, you lose unless you use tactics. So the 5th and 6th division in this battle are both skirmishers, right? They both have about 70 of these skirmishers, and we're going to use them dynamically. Now, admittedly, the tactics we're going to use would probably overcome most enemy armies, right? The enemy's going to charge in this huge tranche of infantry, and we're going to kite, we're going to smoke, we're going to surround them, right? We're going to absolutely mangle them with a surrounding attack. I want to use the RTS mod, so I think I'm going to ride that guy up into the hills there. Hopefully he just rides off, not out of the map entirely, but hopefully he just rides up. What we're going to do, though, is we're going to use our first infantry in a square and or kite, and we're going to pound the enemy from the sides with our skirmisher units. We're also going to be using a tactic I've developed called shield and shock. This tactic basically consists of protecting your shock troops with cavalry, because they're probably the best defensive mechanism in Bannerlord, right? The horses, the armored horses, the shields, the rider on top holding a shield up in shield wall provides an incredible layer of protection for shock troops, which they need, right? Because they have no... Okay, he's taken off too far. I'm just going to micromanage this guy just a second, and I think I'll be able to come back to the battle. Just something just like that. The shock troops are highly vulnerable to archers, especially to enemy cav, and so we're going to protect them, right? The shield and shock, what it does is it uses the cavalry as your defensive mechanism, and then it releases your shock troops into battle with that protective layer, but also, with very few losses, very few arrows actually arriving at them. All right, so the Sturgians, you can see, are pouring in here. It's a huge tranche of infantry, and what you're going to see me do here, this is effectively the tactics of Cannibal and I. We are going to start to surround them. As they push in, we're going to pull back our center, and we're going to lengthen and stretch out our wings on the side of the enemy. Now notice over here, I'm watching out for the enemy cav with my cav, and I've got my shock troops actually in shield wall, which you might be like, that's stupid, what an idiot. They can't hold up a shield. I want them in that formation because they're tight. That way they're much less likely to stick around the edges of the cav and get shot by arrows. Now, the enemy cav over on the right wing also has 27 horse, so our wildlings will sort of deal with them. What I can do is I can stick one unit in square and have the other unit attack and or throw javelins. So here comes the infantry center. They've formed their classic shield wall. Of course, we have our archers back here as well, and when we back up, we will offset them from our infantry. Offsetting means putting them at slightly different locations and slightly different angles. The reason we want to do that, of course, is to provide enfilade fire on this force. All right, over here again, I'm just moving back this 2nd and 3rd division. They are married in this episode, at least until the real blows come. Now notice I've got the 1st division in a square, and we're actually going to move them a lot in this episode in a square. My archers are told to charge there by accident. We're pulling them back. Over here we have 1 division in a square, and the other division is throwing javelins. Now normally the cav will attack your square if it's out front. I kind of fumbled that side of it over there. All right, so the enemy force here is impacting our square. You can see them starting to surround it, and we're going to start to move these shock troops into their final death position, right? Into the position we want them to annihilate the enemy. Again, you notice me offsetting the archers. And over here, now it's time to start applying skirmisher pressure. So the 5th and 6th divisions, they get to start moving up in shield wall. They're kind of dealing with heavy cav, backstabbing them and stuff like that. And I think we'll do this. Let's do slow-mo the rest of this battle. That way I can really slow it down. And you guys can really see the effectiveness of this. So the Sturgians are rampaging, attacking our square with everything they've got. But of course, our guys are in a square. So they're not going to suffer as much damage as they would if they were in a big line. In a big line, they would have already cut through our infantry because they outnumber us like 4-1 there. That's because our troops are spread out, right? We have these wings. At the Battle of Cannae, the Romans pushed in and obliterated the center at Hannibal's forces, or at least tore up a big part of it, but that was by design, right? He wanted them to do that. This is one of those instances where the enemy thinks that they're doing something good. In effect, what they're doing is playing into our desires. So this is temporary. I'm sending the 3rd to charge here because a handful of Sturgian infantry was sort of lurching in there. It's temporary, though. We're going to do a little micromanaging here. The square, now you see, is starting to move offset from where the archers are. Meanwhile, our skirmishers are moving in, right? This is, you can start to see the enemy starting to get surrounded here with their big infantry division. They're chasing our square. Over here, once these guys get positioned, and there's a handful of guys with spears in here. I didn't divide the division very carefully, but most of those guys are skirmishers. They're going to be firing their javelins. Again, we're just moving the square this way, and the reason we're doing that is because we're dragging this huge Sturgian force basically away from the main targets. We're dragging them in front of the archers here. They're getting shot to pieces, and the skirmishers are now coming behind the enemy, unloading javelins, and many of those javelins are hitting the enemy in the back, right? Because the enemy they are facing the other direction, chasing the square. They can't chase the square and run backwards at the same time, so they're getting cut down by javelins. Now this 3rd division is kind of cleaning up the division of the enemy that was sort of in that chaotic center there. We're going to start to move them up as well. Now again, they're married with that cav unit, so the cav unit moves in. The Sturgians have a few units that are sort of piecemeal running here and there, but those guys have no chance. Now the enemy fully facing the other direction is going to face this cav charge. The cav can finally be told to charge into the back of the enemy here. All these javelin guys are just unloading, right? They have 10 javelins, the wildlings do. And look at these guys taking javelins in the back of the neck, right? They're getting skewered. Now that the enemy continues to remain fixated on our square, right? We've pulled them into the forest here. The 3rd Corps finally gets to get into real battle here, right? That they're told to charge, and we're going to surround the enemy here by using this RTS mod. Of course, it's the easiest way to do this. We're going to effectively cover up the open areas where the enemy has effectively guys for our guys to charge with skirmishers. Now look at the death spam, right? The death spam has turned massively in our favor. Not only are they being shot by archers in the back, now they're being charged by cav. The 3rd Corps is in there rampaging behind them, and the skirmishers here are just, it's almost unnecessary, but we're going to fight this as tactically as best as we can, right? These guys are coming in on beautiful angles. They're still throwing javelins. They're spearing horses, and now they're going to come in behind the Sturgians here. In fact, the Sturgians, some of them are routing. They have had enough. They've had javelins in the back of the neck. I see that every shield has 4 javelins. The javelins are pursuing them as they flee from the scene here. And this mighty Sturgian infantry that massively outnumbered us is reduced to rubble. All right, so This battle is over. Any experienced battlefield commander, or even if you have just a modest experience, you understand that 65% of their troops just died. Their infantry fled. We're going to just systematically destroy their archers here. But our main goal for this episode in this battle was accomplished, right? The enemy is totally vanquished, and look at how many troops we have left. Right, they routed because they got completely surrounded and destroyed. Now it's time to destroy the archers. We're just going to move units up in shield wall. And again, the Battanians have these two separate units that both have excellent shield walls. They have their standard speared sword shield guy in the Oathsworn with the pathetic little tiny throwing axe. But more importantly, they have these wildlings with their javelins. Now, the Wildling, to me, is unquestionably the best Javelin unit in Bannerlord, and that's part of the reason I think people underestimate and underutilize the Battanian forces. Now, again, shield and shock approach. These calves here are tired of getting shot, but that's their job. They're not charging like a lot of people use their cav. This episode is not focused on, you know, cavalry strategy, but this is, I can just slip this 10 seconds in because we're in slow-mo. I'm moving this cav up basically to attract a huge amount of the attention from their archers, right? I want their archers shooting our cavalry here. Battania does have weak-ass cavalry. Meanwhile, behind them, we're performing a little magic trick here. As that cav screen moved up, our archers are getting into position, right? We're flanking the enemy here. We're getting closer. And this cav screen is almost going to work like a magic trick where you wave your hand over and suddenly something appears in front of the eyes of the person that you're doing the trick. Right now, the enemy archers only see this heavy cav line coming towards them, but I'm not going to attack with this heavy cav line, at least not yet. I'm actually just going to move these guys through. You see it's interrupting them. They're kind of distracted by it. They're like, what the fuck is this? This cav is just marching through. Actually, they're slowly marching through with their shields up, and the next thing they know, the magic trick is revealed, and there's 90 fiends in perfect position, unloading on them, right? They all got into position without taking any arrow fire, and now they are hammering the enemy with arrows. Meanwhile, again here, I'm sending the 3rd Division through the archers. I don't want them coming up and charging. I want them physically running as fast as they can through the enemy. Now, these guys over here are fucked. They have higher quality archers shooting at them, drilling them in the head, and of course, on that flank, they're outnumbered about 3 or 4 to 1. Over here, you see the cav is continuing its little slow moonwalk through the enemy, but the sole purpose of that is to allow all these shock troops to get up here without taking 1,000 arrows and engage the rest of this archer corps. At this stage, the archers, talk about fucked. That guy just got hit in the neck with a javelin. They're still throwing javelins, these wildlings. And they're high-level javelins, right? They have outstanding throwing skills. You can see them throwing javelins left and right. And at this stage, the enemy has been systematically exterminated, right? Shock troops are now waiting in here. What's amazing is if you're watching at this stage of the battle, you're like, God, you outnumbered the enemy. No, we didn't. I think we had 50 less troops. You'll have to rewind it, but that's what my memory says. We had about 50 less. All right, so we'll do a quick recap here. And I don't know if we'll probably do Aserai, and then maybe we'll do a battle against the Imperials. For sure, we'll do a battle against the Asrai because they have good infantry as well after this. You can see we have fully half of our forces alive, even though we're outnumbered and we have the same quality troops. 240 alive. These guys suffered 238 losses. And look at the work they did. The kills, look at who killed the most. It's the Falksmen, right? It's the veteran Falksmen. In fact, the Battanian Falksmen, the guys that are lower level than the veteran Falksmen, got more kills. A lot of people think they're the best shock troops in the game. And based on this result here, I think that's an upvote for that decision. Now, the Wildlings didn't get a ton of kills, right? These guys got 30 kills. Actually, the veteran skirmishers did better. But it's that added versatility. In an infantry battle, to have guys that can throw weapons at range here. Part of the reason they didn't get so many kills is because the enemy got liquidated by the Falksmen and by the veteran Falksmen, right? These guys absolutely devastated the enemy here. These two different divisions. They got 200 and something kills, and look at the KDR. We're talking a 4-to-1 ratio for these guys. Fully half of them survived, or almost half survived, and they got 83 kills, right? So these guys, these Falksmen of the Battanians are powerful. All right, so we've quickly reloaded this screen, and as you can see, I'm just showing you the same units again. The Aserai here have all Tier 4 and Tier 5 units. We've neglected their Aserai Ferris, and now we've given them fully 20% more troops than us. Everything else is the same. I'm not going to show you every single box, but as you can see, both sides have all Tier 4 and Tier 5 units. I think you guys can probably trust me at this stage that I'm not cheating and trying to squeeze in some kind of advantage here. We don't need it, right? We're tactically going to destroy this force on the battlefield. All right, so a little different map here, but I chose this because, again, it'll sort of be open and you'll be able to see things clear, right? When I'm running these custom battles, of course, clarity is like one of the most important things. If you can't see what's going on, you're not going to benefit very much. That's why I'll try to mix in some of these RTS overhead views sometimes, just to give you guys a little better perspective on the battle. It should look very similar at this stage, right? We've got this third corps. I zoom in before the battle starts to make sure that it's correct, that I get all these guys have shock troops, and I get that by assigning the 1st Division, by the way, a spear and a shield. The skirmishers in the 6th Division have a javelin and a shield, and that's how you make that 3rd Division be shock troops, right? That's how the preference system works for Bannerlord. Now I want to grab a horse here early on, even though this guy can't shoot from a horse. That doesn't really matter. If you can't tell, I'm not interested really in fighting in these episodes. I'm just running around the battlefield here as an observer for us to sort of, as clearly as we can see, these tactics engaged. All right, so fighting an equal strength Aserai force here with a 20% number advantage on us. Let's do this. Now, most of this should look familiar, right? This battle, I have our archers separated into 2 different divisions, right? We're not using the 2 extra divisions of javelin throwers. Just the 6th is javelin throwers. The same idea though applies. We're going to lure the enemy into the center here, surround them, and then massacre them with our 3rd Corps and fire javelins into them. Now the Asrai have very tough infantry, right? They've got these jav cav, as I like to call them. You know, they've got good troops. This is not going to be an easy battle, but if we use our tactics correctly, I think we can maul them too. Again, this cav here is strictly protecting these guys, right? You see the javelins hitting the cav shield. I want those 3rd guys protected from their javelins. I want them protected from their archers. I want them protected from heavy cav charges. Just like before, a giant, massive infantry is coming in, and this shows the weakness, by the way, of having 1 infantry division. Those of you out there watch my videos, maybe you're newer and you're like, why the fuck is this guy running so many units? Doesn't make sense. It's way more complicated. And admittedly, it is more complicated. I have a whole series designed to help people get to this level of skill. You don't get to this level overnight, right? You're going to get to this level through practice. And I have a playlist called the Intermediate Tactics Series that is designed to help you step by step, each video, sort of graduate different levels of high school or college level of Bannerlord command. Alright, so just as before, our center retreats. We're trying to lure them in. By the way, if the enemy attacks one of your wings, you simply turn that into the new center, right? You turn them into the new bait. You rotate all your core units, and then you do the same exact process. It doesn't matter who they attack here. If you apply your tactics correctly, it is checkmate, right? And hence the term checkmate. In checkmate, the reason we use that in chess is that's a position where no matter where you move your king, he is dead, right? That's the whole purpose of checkmate. Alright, so their enemy's coming in, the enemy cav here is coming in at kind of an angle. We just simply move our cav over to intercept them. Here comes their infantry. They're charging hard at our center, which is exactly what we want. And this time we may not put them into a square. I may just do strict kiting. But notice over here the skirmishers are now starting to get moved at angles. Right, I'm moving these guys with a weak archer division, and they're starting to move in effectively behind the enemy. Now the infantry, I'm just telling them to stay close because I want them to pull back. The enemy's charging and roaring, but I think we're going to be able to get those guys out of there just fine. And very few enemy troops reached our guys. Now 3rd Corps, we're just keeping them back from the enemy here. I don't want them charging the enemy just yet. And I want the horse up here absorbing some of these throwing weapons, sort of distracting the enemy. The shock troops don't have shields, so we're going to try to protect them. Our cav do. Not only do our cav have shields, but they have these big fucking horses in the way of the enemy, right? It's difficult to attack a bunch of horses standing there in shield wall. They're very defensive. Alright. So again, we're going to continue to sort of stretch out our cav. The other thing I like to do with cav in this situation is the enemy has lots of archers too. We'll position our cav in front of their archers to protect our shock troops. Archers are actually more dangerous to shock troops than infantry. Alright, these guys are moving back. Our 4th Archer Corps is moving back, but the enemy at this stage is in a very bad position. Actually moved the wrong unit there. Sometimes I make mistakes as well. At this stage, my skirmishers are too far away. I'm actually going to have to rush these guys up. The enemy's charging in so aggressively here. And look, they're down from like 300 infantry down to 220 already. Now the first infantry is put into a square, right, just like before. I think it just works the best in this instance. And we're going to move the 3rd Corps into the enemy flank, right? You can see them firing javelins at our units, but our horses are going to block a lot of those javelins. Wade right into battle here. Hopefully I don't get killed from my horse. You can see over here we have this division, this 3rd division mixed with skirmishers. There's a handful of skirmishers in there by accident. They're starting to move to the enemy's left. Now we're not engaging them aggressively yet, right? Now we're going to drag the cav behind the enemy, and that's your shield and shock. We're leading with the cav. I told the 3rd to follow me. That way the shock troops are behind the cavalry. The cav arrives first, and right behind him are all these furious fucking two-handed weapon shock troops. The archers are back here totally protected, right? They're just laying waste to everything. Look how far the enemy archers are away, right? Because of this kiting process, they're basically out of the battle. Meanwhile, now our three different infantry divisions tear into battle here. I can swing my sword at a few of these guys, my pathetic little axe here, and do 16 damage. But just like the first battle, the enemy routed, right? We absolutely ate them alive, ate them for breakfast, and destroyed their force and routed it with very few losses, right? We'll have to look again at the end menu, but that might have been even less losses than the first one. Now they have a lot of archers here, and this is going to be kind of a pain in the ass to charge. We do have an archer wing ourselves. We're going to be able to do some damage here, but we don't have many cav. A lot of our cav did die in that first battle, so we're going to charge these guys with cav just like the first episode. Understand, friends, that there's no chance we lose this battle. It's just a question of how many losses we take at this stage, right? The master archer is very capable. They have 2 quivers of arrows. They shoot very quickly. We're going to try to distract him with this cav wing. We're going to run up and down here while the rest of our units come in. But we're taking a lot of losses, right? You see the master archer racking up kills on our units. Trying to get shot off my horse here. We'll try to fight this battle. I am using, my weapon at this stage, but this battle's also over, right? The enemy's down to, it looks like, about 20 or 30, 26 Jav Cav and a handful of horse archers. But this tranche of archers is gonna take a little work to overcome. So I've been bringing up the infantry lines in shield wall, right? They're now pursuing the enemy, and behind them I had the third unit, the shock troops. You want to protect them. You don't want those guys charging in the front, because they will get cut down. They will get cut to ribbons. They have no protection against archers. This is why I say I think people are using Britannia wrong. I saw you trying to shoot me, motherfucker. All right, we're cutting in here, cutting down the rest of their archers, but again, this battle is all but over. Bannerlord, more so especially than most video games I've ever played, is a game that emphasizes and utilizes your field of vision, right? As a battlefield commander, as a warrior on the battlefield, it uses your peripheral vision more so than any other game I've ever played. Maybe the first-person shooter games I played when I was as young as you fellas. And what's interesting about that is I have, at this stage, like a scientifically proven high quality of peripheral vision. I know that sounds strange, but I've been tested for it because a doctor noticed it once. The shape of my face is outstanding for peripheral vision. Basically, where my eyes are positioned, I see very, very well to my sides. I remember this was an advantage in high school when I would play like basketball with no-look passes and stuff like that. It didn't preclude me from getting shot off my horse here. But what's interesting is that peripheral vision really helps for Bannerlord, because you can see guys at the edges of the screen trying to shoot you, and you pick it up better than your normal-faced person. And it's strange, these little advantages we derive. Thanks, Dad. You're helping me kick ass at Bannerlord. Incidentally, I have a weakness too. Again, the shape of my face, my eyebrows kind of stick out over the top of my eyes. I have this very pronounced brow over my eyes, and that means I bump my head all the time, right? I have this weakness. This strange weakness to my vision. I bang my head more than anybody I know. Anyways, I don't know why I decided to mention that. I think because there was an Aserai fuck trying to shoot me, and of course my eyes picked him up, and I simply dodged it. But as you can see, this battle is over, right? They're scattering their archers. They're finally being annihilated by our own archers. In fact, our own archers probably could have just moved up and handled them pretty well. But we are going to exact the full tactical approach here, right? Cut a few of these guys down on the way out. Use our peripheral vision here to assess threats on the edges of the screen and win the battle. Okay, not quite as demonstrative as that first battle. Oh, but I forgot that they had fully 20% more troops than us, and look at this. Even though we're outnumbered by 20%, we still skewered them, right? This is another highly successful battle, and especially the infantry side of things, which is really why I'm doing these custom battles. This episode is to focus on the infantry battle, right? We absolutely destroyed the tough Aserai infantry with this supposedly mediocre, bad Battanian infantry, right? And it was an absolute disaster for them. Maybe they got 100 kills and they got swallowed up, throwing javelins in the back, hit them in the neck. Shock troops, weighed in and annihilated them, and we all lived happily ever after. All right, so I want to run one more experiment here. I got the notion, the idea for this actually from the suggestion, and I'd realize this is not very realistic, but the suggestion that, where's the Imperials here? The suggestion that legionaries totally dominate the wildlings. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use the tier 4 and tier 5 infantry for both the Empire, which is these legionaries, right? We'll give them increased, let's see. I want to give them a captain that's neutral here. We'll select, it doesn't really matter actually, as long as they don't have some kind of advantage. We're going to give both sides the tier 4 and tier 5 infantry. But just their main kind, right? Just the legionnaires and this veteran infantry. And again, we'll give them 20% more units. So this is 20% more legionnaire and the tier 4 imperial infantry, the veteran infantry, against our side. We have the wildlings and the veteran skirmishers, right? This is essentially the battle that people suggest is always a massacre. For the Empire, right? The legionnaires are just going to wade through the wildlings, these weak-ass wildlings. Nobody likes them. This is why people are playing Battania wrong, right? You may be doing this, and if you are, congrats, right? Then you don't need this video. But I think a lot of people, this will open their eyes to the power of this wildling unit. Now, I realize I don't have a horse here. I would run around the battlefield and kind of show you stuff, so I think the next best thing is I'm going to run this guy off to the edge of the map here, and then we will use the RTS mod. Again, you can see they have, what is that, 70? Something like 70 or 80 troops more than us, right? You can see that they have much more, 289 legionaries against 240 wildlings, right? They significantly outnumber us here. Again, if you auto-resolve this battle, you would get smoked, right? The legionaries would charge, the Battanians would charge, they would barely get any javelins off, and this battle would be over. I don't know, but I suspect we can absolutely devastate this legionary army here. We're going to surround them, but more importantly, we're going to absolutely fishball and projectile destroy this legionnaire division. This is about to be the most nasty javelin kill box anybody's ever seen in Bannerlord. Look at all these legionnaires. They're just coming up here all proud with their fucking stupid helmet. And their commander's participating, but that's not going to matter one iota. All right, so we're going to start to surround them. We've got 4 different divisions here of wildlings, right? It doesn't actually matter which division goes where. There's one division in the center of 156 men that's going to function as our bait ball. We're going to try to attract them with that, right? That's our fish hook. And now we're going to start to surround the enemy. Incidentally, this is how skirmishers were used in Roman times, in ancient times when skirmishers really sort of came to be, against very tough phalanxes, against very tough units like maybe the Spartans or the hoplites, right? These very tough shield and spear infantry that destroyed everything. They came up with skirmishers, right? And that's not exactly how history went, but skirmishers are effectively very lightly armored troops, sometimes no armor, but they would carry a handful of javelins. Usually they were shortish javelins that were heavy, and they would come in, fire javelins on the enemy, and absolutely skewer these tougher, slower armored infantry with thousands of fucking javelins, right? This is like literally the origin of the Olympic Games. The fucks that run around in track and field and fire a javelin, that's because of our age-old heritage, the Western society, so to speak, of having these javelin athletes, right? You got to have throwing skills. You got to be able to use your body to throw your javelins, and it's very effective. Now, they're highly vulnerable to archers unless they have armor and shields like this, right? The wildlings are actually very protected against archers. This is part of the reason I love them. They're highly versatile. All right, the enemy's boring in. We're just going to try to pull these guys back. A little bit of those guys might be connected by the enemy, but the wildlings have high athleticism. If you don't know that, I think they either have the highest or one of the highest athleticisms in the game. That means they're backpedaling while they're firing javelins, and that's very destructive for the enemy. Now they are going to catch that infantry division. I started to back them up a little bit late here. In fact, I'm sort of scrambling with these other units to get them close enough. I've never done this before with the RTS mod, and I probably would have fought it a little bit differently had I anticipated the speed of the enemy. So what we'll do here, just to compensate for that, is we'll sacrifice this unit, or at least theoretically. I'm squaring them, so these guys are running towards the center here, and these guys will go back to back and put up their shields, right? They have good shields, they're pretty well armored, and even though they're being surrounded here in that square position, it'll at least buy us time to move up our units here. Now, I left my poor commander in the river here, and I hear him getting just wailed. In fact, he just got killed. Yeah, those legionaries chased this poor guy down and cut him down in fucking cold blood. He's just an observer, man. You killed the observer. All right, so our javelin guys are absolutely eviscerating these guys. Look at the javelins flying behind them. They're attacking our square here. Oh, this is going to be a massacre. Look at the enemy is totally infatuated with our square, and we have these javelin guys just absolutely going to work on them. I can't see it from up here, but look at the death spam. That's those guys getting hit by javelins, and it's hundreds of javelins, right? These guys are throwing a javelin like every 6, 7, 8 seconds, and there's 300 of them, right? We'll zoom in here a little bit. You can see the javelins flying around. And the death spam is entirely green, right? It's a total massacre. In fact, they're routing right into these guys, so now I'll tell them to charge. Shield wall and charge. Fuck you, legionnaires. You guys have no chance. In fact, you legionnaires are garbage, despite what people said, right? You don't have javelins. You guys are the real garbage here. We're going to have all these wildlings charge this terrified legion force. Look at our square held out really well. They can charge too, but you obviously at this stage you understand that this battle is over. It's been solid green death spam for a while with these supposedly weak-ass wildlings. If I could only have one infantry in my army, in other words, if you were somehow restricted, I would choose this line here, this veteran skirmisher and wildling line, because they're versatile, right? This is much more versatile than the legionnaires, right? We left a graveyard of these proud legionnaries here. Look at the javelins in them. They all look like fucking porcupines. It looks like a graveyard full of fucking guys who got hit with 12 javelins each. Look, he's got it right in the back of the head. You know, they had a very, very bad day. The legionnaires had hubris from all the guys on Reddit and whatnot talking about how badass they were. They charged in like fucking total fucking with hubris and overconfidence, and they got completely skewered, literally skewered by thousands of javelins here. And I don't know if you remember, we were outnumbered here by 20%. Outnumbered by 20%, and we had 60 losses. And again, you know I'm not using cheats. There are no cheats for the custom battle mode, right? This is pure tactics. This is pure domination with one of the most underutilized, most underrated infantry units in the game, right? This Batanian wildling, I can hear the Batman music playing. These guys are the Bruce Wayne of Bannerlord, right? You use these guys right, and the enemy just wilts before them. Look at the death spam, right? The wildlings racked up 275 kills, and they lost 26. This is a 10 or 11 KDR, right? This is total dominance. All right, so we have beaten that proverbial dead horse. We are going to move on from this, but this custom battle, hopefully this I guess it's 3 different battles here. Hopefully this empirically shows that first, what somebody says, you know, this unit is the best infantry. There's these knuckleheads out there on YouTube. This infantry is the best. You should use only this infantry. Those guys are flat out wrong, right? The bottom line is that Bannerlord is a very deep game. There's lots of different sort of nuances to the strategy. Batanian Fiends do not always crush sharpshooters if you use sharpshooters correctly. In fact, maybe that'll be an episode I do where sharpshooters mangle a bunch of Batanian Fiends. I see that myth as well, and there's a way for the sharpshooters to completely eviscerate the Batanian Fiends as well. So let me know what you thought of this custom series. Hopefully you're closing out this YouTube video, or if you're watching in the background, hopefully you're immediately contemplating how you can get some of these units in your game, because I think that they're highly useful units. So thanks again for watching, fellas. Please subscribe and like and all that good stuff. We will continue this Bannerlord education here. You guys are advancing to the elite status. I appreciate you guys so much, and I will talk to you friends next time.